Welcome to the OK Book Club. This is Book 2, Episode 3, 2-3. And before you listen to this episode, it's important. I'm reading this book along with you. That's the whole idea. So please read page 120 through 159. This is chapters 24 through 31. Spoilers ahead. So definitely stop at page 159, and this is what this episode will cover. So as we get into chapter 24 on page 122, I wanted to point out something right from the front. Because I'm reading along with you, I don't know what's going to happen. And this is not about me being a cheerleader for all these books. If I don't like it, I'm going to point it out. And throughout some of these pages, I've made notes, boring, waste of a chapter. I'll tell you what, Mortimer and very often Al, disappointed in these chapters. I love the books that have the different point of views, and some people don't like this, but I love the chapters that are in particular narrators. In this case, this book, it's either Al, Mortimer, or Evan. I'm not fond in this order, right? In this order of not liking the chapters. I'm not a fan of the Mortimer chapters so far. I'm really not a fan of the Al chapters. It's like Evan's chapters, at least so far, are the only ones that are advancing this mystery. So, what I have found also that I'd like to dive into is this whole idea about Al, Miss Scoggin, Mr. Brock. And on page 122, it's clear Miss Scoggin is a ghost, all right, because she had no use for doors. And then on page 123, what's interesting is Miss Scoggin says, "Isn't it Monday?" And she began to count on her fingers. Mondays were the days I visited Grandfield to renew Mr. Brock's book, buy our few necessities, and practice my invincibility. This is Al talking. She's the narrator. She says she's a ghost, but is she? She's practicing her invisibility. And then as we head into Mortimer's chapter, chapter 25 on page 124, it's like a wasted chapter. It's like, okay, this nice lady comes over to the Lost Library, the little library outside where Mortimer's hanging out, and she drops off some books, and she has this poem that she recites that Mortimer really likes by Langston Hughes. And Mortimer, basically the only insight in this chapter is Mortimer says, "Oh, it's all your fault," his heart said. And this is when he's discussing Petunia and the fact that she's gone, and he doesn't know if she's alive. So is this referencing her disappearing and that it's his fault, or is it referencing it's his fault in terms of being responsible for the fire? And I'll just let you know, my friends in my book club, we asked the big question: who's responsible for the fire? It's not necessarily who set the fire, right? Because it could have been an accident. And overwhelmingly, everyone is saying that it's Evan's dad, although we have one student that said it was Mortimer, and one particular student, some nice, interesting insight, he thinks it is the mice. So, as we get into the next page, we're into chapter 26. And like I said, on this particular page of my book, I have a reference to that previous chapter I just talked about. Boring. But here we go with Evan. He actually says at breakfast with his parents, Mom, Dad, it's weird that they never rebuilt the real library. Why didn't they? His mom cleared her throat. Well, when the library burned down, it was a really painful time for the town. Dad, you lived here. His mother had grown up in California. She and her dad had met in college. Didn't anybody want to rebuild it? And here is what happens next. His dad was staring at the table. He said, if anybody did think about rebuilding, I'd be the last person in town they would want to talk about it. They would want to talk to about it. Listen to this great line. The kitchen felt quieter than it had ever been. Even the refrigerator seemed to hold its breath. It's little diamonds, little gems like this, these sentences that just jump off the page. Pay attention to them, boys and girls. This is great writing. Why? Evan said. But his dad just smiled. I don't know why I said that, Evan. I guess I just didn't get much sleep. The librarian at school said that you used to work there, right? Were you working there when it burned down? Did you know those people who died? His dad looked at the floor. I have so many emails to answer, Evan. I can't have this conversation right now. I'll see you at graduation. So at this point, Evan pounces and just jumps on his father, figuratively speaking. No, you got to answer my questions. What's going on? And basically his father came back to him and said, hey, you're right, Evan. How about after the picnic, after the graduation? You and I will talk. We will walk home together. This afternoon, you won't back out? No chance. It's a plan. So get yourself on the road and let me do my work and start up with this pie. He's making a pie for later on. So we are now hopefully getting some answers. Then we get into the balance of this chapter, starting really on page 132. And they just talk about the graduation ceremony. It's a lot of nothing, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it just again, in my opinion, fine. Give me a paragraph on the graduation and how everyone's feeling good, but to give me 5 pages is just ridiculous. However, on page 136, talk about something that, again, shouts out to everyone that Evan's father has got something to do with this fire. At the graduation, the top of page 136, Evan's dad was, as usual, standing a little bit apart from everyone else. Rafe said to Evan, maybe he's just shy. And, again, something's going on here with his dad. And more proof that something's going on with him as they walk back from the graduation, packing up. Everyone was gathering everything, and his dad totally backed out. I'm sorry, Evan. Dad, you promised. Looking upset, his father was already moving across the parking lot. I can't right now. But we'll talk soon, I promised. And you can tell the exasperation, frustration that Evan is having at this point, and it just further, it's good, right? Things are happening now finally in this book, and we're on page 138, beginning at chapter 27. And this is an interesting chapter, Al's chapter, and what's interesting at the top of page 139, further evidence about Miss Scoggin, right? She hovered above her chair, grabbed onto the seat cushion to steady herself, and fixed me with a look, right? Because, of course, ghosts hover, right? So Mrs. Scoggin clearly is a ghost, and there's no question now, like, Al is not a ghost, right? What happens? She was ready getting some tea from Miss Scoggin, and she's talking about rushing past the front door, and then she heard a knock. Someone was at the door on a Friday, right? This is not when they have these tours of the home. Someone I realized who could definitely see me. Was it just bad luck that I would have been right in front of the big porch window? And it, of course, was a boy holding a notebook. This is clearly Evan, right? And so Al basically is saying to herself, I had 2 choices here. I could pretend I had not seen him, just turn my back and walk away, or I could open the door, right? So what happens? She opens the door. He says hello. I don't know how this works. Was I supposed to make an appointment? Yes, I said. So basically, she's talking to him. Al is not a ghost, although I don't know why she was talking about she was a ghost, but nevertheless, right? She says, how can I help you? Evan's confused as we get into chapter 28, and I just had to laugh out loud with this one, right? So he thought it was Mrs. Baker, but it's not Mrs. Baker, right? And he just assumed, right, well, because she gives these tours at the History House, that she actually lived there. And I underline this sentence because I just think this is so fantastic. That was silly. Like when he was little and thought his teachers lived at school. And I've experienced this so often as a kid and now as a teacher. Your students run into you, in the community and outside of school, and they're just so thrilled and they're so surprised. And I'm like, I feel like a celebrity or something. But oh no, Mr. O'Keefe, Mr. O'Keefe. Yeah, because I actually exist. I'm a real person outside of my classroom. It's funny. It always puts a smile on my face. But back to this chapter as we get into page 143 in chapter 28. Why are you here? Basically, Evan is here, and what was interesting is he says he took off his backpack and sat carefully with it on his lap. And now Evan is referring to Al. She wasn't looking at him, but she wasn't not looking at him. It was a little strange. And so he's looking for a book. He said, no. I'm not after a book. I thought there might be some old pictures here that I could look at of the old library and maybe some newspaper articles from back where it burned down. And she had brought out some cheese, and the line is, the cheese woman froze. Oh, I won't hurt him. I won't mess anything up. So basically, Al says back to Evan, don't worry about that. In fact, you look like a very careful person. And yes, there is a box of things, clippings and such. So what happens? He looks them over, and then as he's leaving later, inside his head, he could hear the words he had copied from the newspaper clipping in his notebook, almost as if they were screaming at him. This is the end of the chapter. Listen to this. The fire warden has determined that the tragic fire started in the basement. The police are questioning a young librarian intern who was the last person known to have been in the basement before the fire broke out. His name is withheld here due to his age. The road home felt much, much longer than usual. Oh boy. Then as we head into the next chapter, it's Al's chapter. It's not even a page. It's emotional. It's interesting. And, listen, occasionally you need short chapters. And basically it's her reflection on what had just happened. And listen to this. She talks about, it was wonderful. I felt I had to stop myself from floating up off the floor right in front of him, although I had never actually managed to float. For once, I was grateful for my unsatisfactory invincibility. That struggle, which I had always thought of as a weakness, had given me this beautiful moment. So she's a ghost. She's not a ghost. She's clearly not a ghost. It can't be, right? And yet, it's a really touching little chapter, as I told you. I looked out the window and across the way to where my little library stood, right? It's interesting. The book title is The Lost Library, but everything that we're focusing on is this little library that replaced the old library. And clearly the old library that burnt down is the Lost Library, but so much of this book is this little library. And I felt proud of our town for making this little library grow, and proud of the dear cat for watching over it. And I remember Miss Scoggins' words. You are a librarian, are you not? Then, as great as that little reflective chapter is, the next chapter, you should have just thrown it out. I can't wait to look back at this book and what chapters can be thrown out. Chapter 30, Evan. What happens? Fine. He meets a new kid that's a little older than him, Dimitri, and they start talking, and he's going to see him on the bus when they start middle school. Great. I sure hope that this is important, and maybe we're introducing a new character here, but blah, blah, blah. Wasted. He was only 3 pages, but waste of 3 pages. We go into the next chapter, 31, Evan's chapter, and what ends up happening, they got these keys, and it was Dimitri, as it turns out, that told them about this padlock up at this treehouse, and they go up with, Evan and Rafe go up to unlock this padlock, or at least to see if these keys open it up, and sure enough, they do, and they go into the treehouse. So on page 154, they get into the treehouse, or they're trying to get into it, and they fall down to the ground. There's a suspenseful moment, but really not well done at all. I just didn't sense it. I wasn't excited to read this, or nervous to read this, upset to read this. It just fell flat. Sorry for the pun there, but yeah, they fell down. They got back up. And what was interesting is this is a great line at the bottom of page 155. Talk about an insight into a character, and it could have been Rafe. Again, up until this point, Rafe could be so much better. There's so much potential here in terms of the writing. But listen to this. Rafe falls down, right? And Rafe smiled. He said, pull me in. Come on. I need a hug. He wasn't kidding. When Rafe needed a hug, he asked for a hug. It was one of the things that made Evan understand that Rafe, unlike Rafe's parents, was mostly fearless. Once he was in, and after the hug, Rafe brushed shards of bark from his shirt. This ground isn't as safe as my parents think it is. Just really interesting how it's just so wonderful that a kid can actually say, you know what, at this age, peer pressure and all, that he needs a hug. What a great kid. So they're in the treehouse. They're looking for clues, and Evan hesitated, right? Because Rafe had asked him, tell me again why we're up here, why this matters so much. And Evan hesitated. I need a suspect, a real one. And Rafe said, tell me again why you need a suspect. Because Evan took a deep breath and decided to say the words. This was Rafe. He could trust Rafe. Because my dad is a suspect. I think he was working at the library that night in the basement where the fire started, but he didn't do it. I know he didn't. So I have to figure out who did. He waited for Rafe to answer more questions, but all Rafe said was, your dad would never set fire to a library, not in 10 million lifetimes. Anyone who knows him would know that. It felt good to hear Rafe say that. Well, yeah. Then they talk about, well, do you really think H.D. Higgins had something to do with this fire? Maybe. We know he returned a book that day, a book with a picture in it, but we don't know that those keys were his. They could have been anybody's. The keys opened the treehouse, Evan said, sitting down on the bench. So and they're up in the treehouse now, right? So if there's something up here that points to H.G. Higgins, he'll be the real suspect. I could tell the police, maybe. And then they finally look outside and they say, oh my God, Evan, this is it. This is where the Polaroid picture was taken. H.G. Higgins or someone was standing right here with the camera. This is that picture that fell out of the book that they took from the little library. This picture, again, friends, just so it's clear, this picture was taken from the very spot that they were sitting in right now. Evan reached for his backpack, felt around, and he pulled out the picture. And the book was returned to the library on the day of the fire by H.G. Higgins. He held up this picture while Rafe did his best to maintain the view through the spy hole. Right here. I can even see that knot in the picture. He pointed to a brown spot in the wood just beside the window. So as this chapter ends, they're basically saying, right, this is what Evan says, this proves that H.G. Higgins used to live in Martinville, right? He was at the library the day it burned down. He returned this book. He wrote this book. And then he never came back. He probably lives in New York City with millions of other people and thinks no one will ever find him. Suspicious, Rafe says. But why would he want to burn down a library? He writes books. I'm going to find him, Evan said. I'm going to make him confess, and then everyone will know my dad didn't set this fire. I'm going to help you, Rafe said. So that's the end of chapter 31. We have just finished page 159, and that's the end of our third episode on Book 2, The Lost Library. Friends, you want to be with me on our next episode. We're going to finish this book. It's really coming to a good conclusion. Happy reading. I mean, we've got the home stretch here. We've got maybe 50 pages left. Who was responsible for the fire? What is it that Dad has to tell Evan? Who is H.G. Higgins? You know, all these answers, and it's a mystery, and looking forward to it. So this has been the OK Book Club podcast. We'll see you next time, friends.